Dhamaka.
जहाँ खड़े हो जाते हैं लाइन वहीं से शुरू होती है।
तुमने कभी किसी से प्यार किया?
Hi and welcome to a new episode of Khandan Podcast. My name is Asim Bernie and I'm joined with my lovely co-host Amrita and Sujoy. Hey Amrita.
Hey
Sujoy.
everybody.
Hello.
Auntie!
We are...
I went full auntie. Sorry.
We are continuing our 80s series. How many movies do we have left, guys?
This decade seems to never end.
एक बार कमिटमेंट करके फंस गए
Amrita is like, next time you come up and I say, suggest something, just shut me up. You know?
No, that's why, Amrita is suggesting new ideas. Like, ये करते सुबह 6 o'clock को मैसेज आता है ये करने.
Well, so stuff. No, I can't trust her anymore.
Like there's like a point right in the middle of like whatever series that we do where we are just like, this is like the worst thing that we've ever done and we need to stop.
But I would like to call out and like ask people, are you still enjoying the series? Like, let us know, because that will maybe boost this up, because the thing is we like hanging out. We'll talk about anything, so we will talk about anything. But, I think also it's a rough week.
Yeah.
Like these two that we're doing is rough.
But honestly, like, what is the option? Like, are we going to be talking about Houseful 5? Like, I don't think so.
That's the other problem, that nothing is inspiring me to even talk about at the moment. Like, nothing. So it's like, like, let's just go back to 80s and like cover this decade. Because honestly, I was like thinking we should do a Patreon episode and talk about some of the trailers or some of the movies and stuff like that. But there's literally nothing I want to talk about. Like,
do you
get
this? Like, we are not like chronically online and watching all Bollywood gossip news, etc. But still, do you get this dire sort of sixth sense that things are not going well in Bollywood? Like everything seems so like down in the gutter.
Yeah, I feel that. Like, even if you go to like Reddit Bollywood gossip thing, it's all about like, oh, this secretary did that to somebody, or this PR is playing dirty. Like, do we want to talk about like Vanga and Deepika? Is that what like I don't know if that's even interesting or not. I think Amrita, you did a little video about that on your catch up for Patreon, so people can go watch that.
It's just so like dreary. Like even the gossip is like, it's not really gossip. It's just like, oh, like you said, like pointing out that the PR machinations are like bad and everything. And I'm like, that's not gossip. Like in our day, we had gossip. Gossip ho to wo ho, ya to na ho. Like it was
Cineblitz, lot of Cineblitz.
No, but remember, like Shah Rukh and Salman were like beating each other. Amir has a secret child. Like, and then these people are like, what is their gossip? Their gossip is like, oh, like Deepika is not happy about Tripti having that role. And like,
Ananya was mean to somebody in high school. That's the gossip. Like, what is it?
And like, what kind of idiot gossip is this?
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's
sucks.
boring. We're continuing with the 80s. We're going back to Saagar Kinare. Today we are talking about. Is this the first Ramesh Sippy movie we're talking about on Khandan?
Have you never talked about Sholay?
I don't think we have. No. I don't think we've talked about Sholay. It's. I mean, it's everybody's talked about Sholay already, so I don't think we can add.
And we haven't done Shan either, so yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Saagar. Amrita, do you have a little summary for us to read, or shall I read it from IMDb? Is that better?
So this is old people's Rangila. Like that's what this
I did write that down, the Rangila reference for sure.
It's about there's like this weird are they all supposed to be fisher people? Like,
Hmm.
what is the
Yeah.
Yeah.
colony?
I'll,
Like, it
I'll I'll
is
read
like
it
a.
from IMDb. Okay. Um Raja, a fisherman, is secretly in love with Mona. When wealthy Ravi comes to live with his grandmother, Kamla Devi, he sees Mona and falls in love with her. Mona also reciprocates his love. Raja is devastated by this turn of events. But when Kamla Devi gets to know that Ravi is seeing Mona, she puts pressure on Mona to give up Ravi and marry somebody else. That's the plot summary from IMDb.
I
That's
mean, sure, sure.
Yeah, that's a
And
reading.
that is one interpretation of
Yeah,
events.
yeah,
Um, but really, like, the Rangila parallels are like really strong with this movie.
yeah,
Except in this movie, it works out realistically, in which the girl looks at the rich guy and goes like, "Yeah, of course I'm gonna marry him. Like, why wouldn't I marry the prince in the palace?"
yeah.
And yeah, it's a story.
I think from all of the movies we picked, we didn't have like a love triangle,
Mhm.
right, from the 80s. And I think this was one. And I think this movie is one that kind of like, I remember this movie like coming out, the songs being big, it talked about. But I'll also be honest, I had never seen this movie until I'm watching it for the
Oh
podcast.
wow.
It's my first watch. But what about you guys? Sujoy, you had seen Sagar before?
I think I have seen before, but I can't be sure if I've seen it all before. This
Right.
is a very horny movie, and I don't think it was age appropriate for me to watch this movie until now. Now that I'm 42
But
years old.
that's one of those things that I remember, that even when it came out, it had like something adult, something
Mhm.
scandalous to it.
Yeah.
But now I watch it and I'm like, I don't. Yeah.
मेरे बेल्जियन सेंसस के लिए तो ये कुछ भी नहीं है.
My liberal mindset, ये तो होता है
Uh,
like, yeah.
Papi
Um,
Samaj has progressed far
yeah.
beyond this
No, I
movie.
still
yeah,
find it.
exactly.
I
But
still find it extremely sensuous and very, very horny. Yeah,
really,
Sujoy is like, it's like watching my parents
yeah.
kiss. Like, I don't know.
It does feel like that. Like if my mom walks into the room right now and me watching Sagar, I
Lumutna
yeah,
hai.
it's like watching Game of Thrones. You know, Rishi uncle and Dimple auntie will do something, and I'll be like scarred for
I,
life.
I, I'm I'm glad, Sujoy, somebody has values in this
Yeah.
OnlyFans era
Yeah.
from us. Like,
I'm a very sanskari kid at heart. I might
yeah,
be
I see
like
that.
very rowdy on the streets, but
Sanskari in the
The
sheets.
sheets. Ah.
uh,
Sujoy didn't know like how that
yeah,
that sentence was going to play
yeah.
out when he started
There goes my
speaking.
Tinder profile. Yeah, but yeah, I can't be sure if I watched Sagar before in its entirety. So I was quite surprised at the turn of events, because this is a very template Bollywood romance, whatever triangle. We've seen it since time immemorial. You know, from Sangam onwards. I suppose that's the earliest love triangle I can think of in terms of Bollywood cinema. There might be some more in the black and white era, I guess, but I was quite surprised at how this played out, because a lot of
Mm.
times Bollywood triangles or love triangles are very, very simply resolved just by communication, and there is no sort of reliance on miscommunication or or misunderstandings. It's very well thought out, I would say. In that sense, Sagar, I thought like it has aged well in a way.
Yeah, it is definitely that long tradition of love triangles, from Sangam to,
Mhm.
Sajan to Sonu ki Titiki wedding, like long tradition. Amrita, what are your thoughts on Saga?
I actually have very strong memories of Sagar because I went through a very short phase, probably in the early 90s, I want to say, where I was obsessed with Dimple Kapadia. Like, I thought Dimple Kapadia was the most beautiful, most glamorous woman that I had ever seen. I think that lasted for maybe 3 months or something. But
Just like Mahesh
I
Bhatt.
was.
Just like Mahesh Bhatt and Parveen Babu.
I think Amrita just watched her movies and then the phase went over.
I was actually going to ask you guys, but we'll come to that later.
No.
You know, like, well, how do we feel about Dimple as an actress? But yeah, like there was just this whole thing where I remember all the Filmfare and Cine Blitz and Stardust magazines were basically like Dimple fan magazines at one
Mhm.
point, because they were all just talking about like, oh my god, she's a goddess. Like basically the way that they talk about Deepika these days is how they used to talk about Dimple Kapadia back then.
Oh, wow.
um except they were just like really focused on the fact that she was beautiful, you know. And I remember weird things. Like I remember how people would talk about her hair, and you know how her hair. And she also had that Crowning Glory
Mhm.
ad on TV all the time throughout the 80s.
What's Crowning
Um,
Glory? It's
it
soap
was
or
I yeah I don't think it exists anymore, but I think it used to be like maybe a soap or a shampoo. Maybe I don't know.
Mhm.
I think they were I think they were washing their hair with
Yeah,
soap back
it was a soap.
then. But it was called Crowning Glory, and
It's
you know it was basically
I
about
think
like,
it was made by Godrej.
yeah,
Yep.
probably. And Dimple was just everywhere. And this particular movie, I remember how it was supposed to be super risque, and everybody was just like, "Oh, it's not for children." You know, like everything that Sanskari Sujoy said is true, except I would not let that, you know, stop me back from doing whatever it was that I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was watch Sagar, so I did. I don't know how I felt. Like I can't remember how I felt about this movie when I was little. I do remember being like, "Oh my god, it is scandalous!" Except, especially that song by the swimming
Mhm.
pool where you know she's wearing that red sari and she's just gorgeous. Um, I think mostly I was just really annoyed by Kamal Haasan,
Mm.
who's just like a very annoying character. And, and sadly, like all these years later, when I watched Sagar, that hasn't changed. So yes, even little Amrita was just like, nope, nix.
So I have a message here from one of our patrons when I asked them about Ramlakhan and Sagar, and this is from Melanie, who says, I like Sagar because of being a Kamal Hassan fan. I think that it is probably his only direct Hindi film that is memorable and somewhat does justice to his talents. Lots of the films he did in Hindi are remakes of his own Tamil movies or bilingual later on. Plus, the soundtrack of R.D. Burman is amazing, and I like Dimple, and Rishi is basically playing Rishi Kapoor's character, and he is okay. This is also reminds me a little bit of Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na, set in Goa, where the guy Shahrukh, who is incredible, I'm a big fan of his, who doesn't get the girl in the end, becomes the hero of the film and practically walks away with the film. I think actually Kamal Hassan was the best part of this movie. Like he has such a Purtila Naujawan
Mhm.
energy in this. He is like, and I understand that it can be grating, but I remember like. I remember like he had this movie and he had Giriftar at the same time, like
Mm-hmm.
and I thought he was like the coolest dude ever. Like, watching him was because he didn't do that many movies because he had that Notorious B.I.G. thing where he was like a couple of movies and he's gone and we never got to see him again and we didn't. Like I remember like years later, my Papa suddenly became Ranbir from Animal. It's Father's Day. I spoke to him just now and wished him. That's why Papa is in my head. Papa Meri Jan. So, um, no, my dad brought this cassette of Appu Raja,
Uh-huh.
I think,
Apura, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
the Hindi
Mhm.
version, right?
yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like
yeah.
blown away. Oh my god, it's the guy from Giriftar, and he's like this. So I like, we were young. I didn't know where he went to and all that kind of stuff. So I thought he was amazing, and here watching him, I that brought a lot of those memories back for me. Because for me, like, and apparently Kamal Hassan is like, why did you make me ham this much, Ramesh Sippy? Like, he doesn't understand why he was allowed to be so over the top and so loud and so hammy. But he was like, okay, that's what Ramesh Sippy wanted, so that's what I gave him. But he doesn't understand why this was a thing and that he was allowed. So yeah, I think as a kid, I just thought that energy was amazing. But yeah, um,
No,
you don't agree.
no. Even as a kid, I was just like, nope, I can't deal with this. This is just too
I'll be
much.
honest. When so the scene where he realizes that Mona is in love with Rishi Kapoor, right? And then he has to pretend that he was joking, but you can see that he's breaking inside. My heart totally goes out for him. He's the hero of this movie. Yeah.
Okay,
He
yes.
like
Yeah.
he's the performer, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, Kamal Haasan is a fine actor, and when he's allowed to do that, like in that particular scene, for example, it's
Mhm.
really good. It's just that that character he's playing an
Yeah, yeah,
archetype,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
this is a, and I can't stand
Mhm.
that. Like
Yeah.
that is what I can't stand. It's not Kamal per se that I have an issue with.
The other thing is also you have he's playing against Rishi
Mhm.
Kapoor, right?
Hmm.
And like obviously he's gonna outshine Rishi Kapoor in any way, shape, or form. Like this is not like it's that typical like you could have swapped the Nagina role from Rishi Kapoor for this role. It's exactly the same thing. He's coming from Vilayat. He has like a rich mom. He's drinking soup and ill-fitting clothes. Like it's Rishi Kapoor,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, and basically he's just walking around with a camera and being Sujoy. Like what this is what Sujoy does.
No, I'm not. No, no, Qasim,
Yes,
no.
Sujoy comes from Vilayat. As a
I'm
camera.
not taking pictures of scantily clad women on the beach. I'm not being Jackie Shroff in Rangila. Uh,
Yeah. What
You
did
need
you
to
say?
put on your chaddis and like go into the
no,
waves on the beach.
yeah,
And then he gets really connected with this Baba
yeah. AK Hangal.
on the beach, AK Hanga. Yeah, it's just funny, man. Like watching all of these 80s movie, we see the same character actors
Mhm.
come back, come back, come back, right? Like I think we have three Saeed Jaffrey roles in
Yeah,
a row, and I think that's
Yeah.
why the intro to this was I can't take it
yeah,
anymore. I think it's Saeed Jaffrey's fault. Like I
yeah,
too much Saeed Jaffrey, AK Hingle, like this one has Lilliput in it. What the hell is
yeah.
Lilliput doing? I don't understand. Like, he's playing like a disabled person, I think, but he has no arc.
No,
He just kind of shows up in the background, he claps, and that's it. Like, I don't understand what kind of representation this was supposed to
and
be.
a similar.
So when we were watching Sagar, Asim messaged the group and he was just like, "What is Lilliput doing?"
Yeah.
I was hoping they would tie it in with
Hmm.
something like he would be
No.
the doggy from Hum Aapke Hain Kaun or something like
Yeah.
tie it in some way. But no, nothing. He's just like in the background and there's
Like
no
he would be the
arc to
one
it.
to foil Shafi Namdar's grand plan. Nothing happens. Nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
And just
Yeah,
at the end,
right.
like
It's
Shafi Namdar has been planning all this while, and then he ends up like boom, boom, boom. That's the only plan he's got.
again, I like the other thing that I'm noticing a lot of the 80s villains, I totally get where they're coming from. So Shafi Anamdar has been managing everything for the last 50 years because that's how old Rishi Kapoor looks in this movie. So clearly he's been doing it for
Yeah.
50 years. And now because Rishi is back, has clearly no skills, no interest in taking over this empire. Shafi just has to hand over this everything. I think Shafi was like
Yeah.
completely like, what is this nepotism, auntie? Like I was like, yeah, promote internally. Like I get it. I get it. But yeah, Melanie was also mentioning about the setting of this movie, right? And I think this is very unique at that time, like where this kind of
I
fisherman's
guess Bobby
village
had
and
happened.
Well, yes,
Hmm.
yes. So it's really interesting because this is Dimple Kapadia's comeback
Hmm.
vehicle after she had gotten married to. So she had Bobby come out like maybe 10 years before this, 10, 12 years before this. And then she immediately, even before Bobby came out, she got married to Rajesh Khanna. and went away, had two kids.
What
That
is up with that? Just sorry, I'm like, what is up? Like, why?
Oh,
Why
it's yeah, it's
do
it's
you
one of
know?
the.
Scandal.
Like,
I mean, yeah,
That's
it's like one of the. So this is what, like, everything behind the scenes of this movie is so interesting, and then like this movie is just like it's such a chore. So there's this documentary that you can see actually, and it was made by the BBC, and it came out in the 1970s, and um, it basically follows Rajesh Khanna the night of his premiere for Dag,
wow.
which was the first movie that Yash Chopra produced under the YRF
Hmm.
banner. So Yash Chopra was already like a super successful director, but he was working under his brother B.R. Chopra's banner up until then. And then all of a sudden he decided that he wanted to start his own studio, and he made Dag with Rajesh Khanna and Sharmila Tagore, because he went back with them like a long time, like like way back to Waqt and stuff like that. And Rajesh Khanna at that time was just coming down off the high of, like, his golden run, which has never been seen or replicated by anybody in Hindi cinema since. So from 1969 to 1972, literally anything and everything Rajesh Khanna touched turned to gold. Everything was a golden jubilee. And then, like, the tides changed. Amitabh Bachchan started coming in. The meteor for the Bollywood film began to change, and his films didn't work as well as they were before. So Dag had a lot of things riding on it. If Dag had failed, YRF wouldn't exist today. Yash Chopra would have had to go back to B.R. Chopra with his tail between his legs. Um, Rajesh Khanna couldn't really bear another flop. So there's a whole bunch of things happening. So the BBC news crew was following him around, and like they're just sort of like shooting him at home as he and Dimple get dressed to go to the premiere. Then they're just sort of like following him at the premiere, and they're just sort of talking about what it's like to be a Bollywood superstar. And there's incredible amounts of access, right? And the thing that I remember the most about that documentary is Dimple Kapadia, who is getting dressed, and she's like decked up. Like, she's wearing like more makeup and more jewels than pretty much anybody that I've seen up to that point. And it is so uncomfortable to watch it because she is a baby, like a
she's 16,
literal, yeah,
16.
she
Like,
is a baby. And it's especially so because, you know, the rest of us, we've seen her as an
Hmm.
adult. It's
mm,
not that she got married and then we never saw her again. Like, we've only seen her in Bobby, and therefore she's like always that child to us. No, we saw her in Bobby, and then we saw her in the 80s and the 90s and into the 2000s. And we know what she looks like as an adult. And she had like a good 20 years of like leading
Hmm.
roles in Hindi cinema. So we know what she looks like as an adult, and it's very clear to like see what she looks like in that, and then like, what she looks like in this documentary. And Kaka's like having like his own issues, like he's sort of like biting his nails. He's like clearly like, got like a shit ton of things on his mind. And this poor girl is like trying on jewelry. She's like asking her makeup stylist, like, oh, like, should I put this? Should I put that? And she's so unsure. And she's like so alone, like absolutely abandoned in this giant mansion that they're living in. um and it's just horrendous. So there's like all these stories of how she underwent domestic abuse, and then like finally when she left Rajesh Khanna, he didn't support her whatsoever. So she didn't have, there was no alimony, there was no child support. She had these two little girls, and she needed to somehow support them and herself. And the marriage had broken down. They never got divorced because Rajesh Khanna had political ambitions at the time, and it wasn't good for him to be a divorcee. So she was still like sort of shackled to this man, and it was just this horrible, horrible situation. And Sagar was her lifeline. It was so she was dating Ramesh Sippy at the time. I don't know if she started dating him before the movie or like during the movie. And this is clearly before she met Sunny. But she was dating Ramesh Sippy at the time, and he just like really gave her the grand comeback that she needed to launch herself as a leading actress and sort of gain back that career that she gave up, that would have been hers in the 70s if she had stuck around after Bobby, because she was like the nation's darling at that point. um and there's like the parallels, right? Like, so Bobby had Rishi and Dimple, and this one has Rishi and Dimple. There's the whole fisherman community that was like part of Bobby, and it's very much like that whole fisherman thing is like very much a hallmark of Raj Kapoor's
Mhm.
cinema, actually. And Ramesh Sippy just sort of like took that and like, created this entire thing. um yeah, so there's like a lot of like Raj Kapoorian um aesthetic in this film that is just very interesting to see.
And brought forward to
Yeah.
the 80s, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do feel like I was reading on IMDb that Rishi Kapoor actually went to Rajesh Khanna to ask for permission to act with
Mhm.
her. And Rajesh Khanna was like, I don't care, do whatever you want.
And they did.
And yeah. And yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, for a movie as a comeback, it is quite brave of her to make such a horny
Mhm.
movie that, Sujoy couldn't even watch it. Like, like it is like it is a sign of bravery when you're kind of, and I do think that kind of bravery is something that we think of when we think of Dimple
Mhm.
Kapadia as an actor, as a person, like somebody that is very strong-willed and walks her own path. But obviously, when you're a 16-year-old girl marrying this like Buddha in 1973, that's just an insane story. Like and something. So the documentary is called "Man Alive: Bombay Superstar." It's available on YouTube, and I think you have mentioned this one before, so I think I need to watch it. I've never watched it just because I can't stand Rajesh Khanna's face. I don't
And
watch his
this,
movies, and I don't watch
yeah,
his.
this documentary isn't going to make you change your mind.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, yeah.
Like speaking
So,
of brave, the print that we watched on Amazon Prime is slightly edited because there is an infamous topless scene of Dimple Kapadia in the original print, which is rumored to have broken a lot of VHS pause buttons in back in the day.
wow, that's crazy. I thought it was a
No,
rumor. Like,
that scene
everybody's like,
exists. I have seen it, by the way, for my
oh.
sanskari self.
So the thing is, like, I spoke about it being her relaunch vehicle, but the thing is, at this point, she was not only a married woman with like two
Mhm.
children, but she was married to the biggest superstar of the
Yeah.
1970s. So she was like literally Bhabhi
Mhm.
ji. And
Yeah.
then she somehow needed to reinvent herself as an object of desire, because I'm sure everybody was like lining up in Bollywood to tell her like, oh no, like nobody will want to see you, like, like you're like auntie G material right
Mhm.
now, like, like you should do like marquee roles. And she was like, what, 26 at this point? Like, that's ridiculous. So yeah, she needed to do something shocking in
Yeah.
order to get
And
um
Ramesh Sippy chose the Raj Kapoor route for that.
yeah,
Yeah. In more than
yeah,
once.
why mess with the
Yeah.
master?
Insane. Yeah, I mean, being a Bhabiji has never stopped
Yeah.
Desi men
That's also true.
for their horniness levels. Actually, it probably like increases it, I feel. Okay, so what do you think about the whole Kamla Devi bit?
Oh
Like
my
this
God.
evil mother that kind of, because this is Madhur Jaffrey's apparently
Yeah.
Yes.
only
Yeah.
Hindi role, right? Okay.
Uh, I thought Kamala Devi was written like when Ramesh Sippy was on the loo and just scribbling notes. Like it's so one dimensional. Like he just came up with this character and just wrote her as this. Like there is no arc. Why is she like that? She's just like patthar dil for for no reason at all. I just hated it so much.
And then
But
also
also,
the turn happens
Hmm.
quite
Yeah.
quickly, right?
I mean, it's also the fact that it's being played by Madhur
Yeah.
Jaffrey, who, I'm sorry, is like a really
Yeah.
terrible actress. Like
Hmm.
she's so talented in so many different ways, but acting is
No.
not one of them.
Hmm. And also they put this terrible wig
Yeah.
on her. Also, like it like the styling of it, like the writing of it, the performance, it just
And
doesn't
then,
work,
like,
right?
Saeed Jaffrey is overcompensating for the lack of talent Madhur has in that one confrontation scene, and Madhur is like, "Tu mar abhi."
Yeah. They were married at the
I
time,
think
or
so, yeah.
Yeah, I
uh,
think
uh,
so.
uh, 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 uh. Yeah, I can't stand Saeed Jaffrey at all. Like it's like such a performance that I'm like I just get really annoyed
Yeah.
with it. Yeah. Um, what did you think of the friendship between Rishi and Kamal Hassan? Because a lot of times that is always the central tenet of the story, right? Like these men are really into
Yeah.
each other.
I think a lot of the
uh,
heavy lifting on that friendship is done by the music itself, especially like when they bond over
Yeah.
Feni, which is a very Goan thing, and then the whole "You Hi Gaate Raho" that song happens. SPB and Kishore Kumar and all of that is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But obviously, like Kamal Hassan can dance so well. I think yeah, all of that.
it really had me like Salman with Govinda Prabhudeva Jalwa vibes. Like when Rishi Kapoor
Yeah,
Bichara is dancing next to
yeah.
Kamal Hassan, it's crazy to see it. Like yeah, yeah, he's
So
such a
there's
star.
like a lot of gossip about that, right? Behind the scenes. Like I said, like this movie, there's like so much stuff that happened
Give us a
behind
tea,
the
Amrita.
scenes. So this was really like, I think this was the last Hindi movie that Kamal Hassan did, if I'm not
No, there's quite a
mistaken.
few other
Um,
after this, but yeah,
yeah, then maybe
But
it's
I
the
think
last one
also
he
sometimes
shot
they
for
yeah,
or
release
something.
quite
later,
Yeah,
possible.
that kind of thing might have also
yeah. So
happened,
I think maybe this was the last one that he shot for or something. But basically, when this movie came out, Kamal Hassan was nominated for a Filmfare for both Best Actor and Best Supporting
Yeah.
Actor. Right. I don't know how that happens. And then he won the Best Actor, and then I think, like, like he gave up the supporting actor or something. Something shady and really stupid happened. But basically, there was like a lot of like behind the scenes ego hassles between Rishi and Kamal, because even a blind man could tell that Kamal was basically acting rings around Rishi, and Rishi was just so used to being like, the
Hmm.
Rishi Kapoor. And I mean, I don't feel about Rishi the way that Asim does. Like, Asim can't stand Rishi Kapoor, and I am a lot more forgiving of Rishi Kapoor. But even, like, I have to admit, like, Kamal is like much better as a performer. Um, and Rishi didn't like it. Like, Rishi was just like, okay, so in this movie, you have Dimple Kapadia, who is dating the director and is showing her movies, and everybody's just going to be like, oh my God, Dimple. And then you have Kamal Hassan, who's like dancing like Michael Jackson and like acting rings around me. And then what am I doing? Like, what? Like, this was, he didn't know it at the time, I guess, but this was basically when he begins his journey into becoming Sweater
Hmm.
Uncle,
yeah.
which like goes on into the 90s, and I didn't think he realized that that's where his career was headed.
Yeah. You don't have that insight, or
Yeah.
hindsight, whatever. But I guess he got the promise of being the one with the Kishore Kumar voice. He gets to play guitar and carry a camera around the beaches. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm actually, while you guys are talking, I'm actually Googled the topless scene of Dimple
Mhm.
Kapadia, which is bloody insane. Like, I'm like watching it now. It's like, what the hell, man? It doesn't even make any
Yeah.
sense. Like, I would just watch the thing while you were talking. I was like, it's just like
Yeah, yeah,
gratuitous
yeah, yeah.
tit flashing. I understand that this
Yeah.
got, yeah,
Uh,
it's,
by
yeah,
the
it's,
way, so Kamal Hassan got nominated for both best actor and best supporting actor. He won the best actor, where Rishi Kapoor was nominated for another movie called Tawaif, and the best supporting actor, where Kamal Hassan was also nominated, was won by Amrish Puri for Mary Jung.
wow.
See, that's a win that I
Mhm.
support.
You guys wanted to also talk about the Rangila connection that you guys saw, right? Was it Amrita or
Amrita.
Sujoy who was? Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, you have the girl in the on the beach who's like, and I didn't put that together until I saw this movie, by the way,
yeah.
because obviously I've seen Rangila before multiple times, and it gets um, referenced quite often on this podcast, amongst other things. But I genuinely didn't see the connection until I was watching this movie, and then I was just like, "Oh, I see it. I see it." You have like the sort of Tapori,
Hmm.
best friend. He's not a Tapori in this, but like,
Yeah.
like sort of like, um what do they
Gali ka
call them,
choda.
Bernies, like, like, yeah, so he's like one of those. And then you have like the rich guy, like the prince in the palace. And then you have the hot girl with the like the hair is what I noticed,
Mm.
like Dimple's hair in this, and
Heron.
Urmila's
Yeah.
mane in Rangila, and the way that like Urmila would like play around with her hair, like that immediately just made me think like, oh, like this is where Ramu got his
Mm.
inspiration from. And I wonder why, like, I don't think Ramu's ever mentioned it as
Yeah,
one
I
of
don't think
his
so.
inspirations, but it's so clear when you see it.
For sure. What did you guys think of the songs of the movie? Like, because like the one that I remember is "O
Hmm.
Maria." That was like the
Yes.
big song, and I think I knew the song, but I had never watched it
Hmm.
intensely. And I was watching, and I was like, "Who invited these two assholes
Yeah.
to the wedding?" Like, they're humiliating the
Uh-huh.
groom. She's upstaging the
Yeah.
bride. Like this is not a good dynamic at your wedding.
Yeah. John is getting so much beat up at his own wedding. Like it's crazy.
Uh,
Uh, yeah, I really like Omaria, by the way. That song is such a banger still. But
yeah.
also we were talking about the Bobby references in that song. Dimple clearly says "Hum tum ho kamre mein aur chabi kho jaye" in that particular song.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my favorite is this is such a strong soundtrack though. Like even
Yeah.
the la 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 is so iconic,
Yeah.
and R.D. Burman went all out with this. Sagar Jaisi Aankhon Wali, uh, Jaane Do Na, Sach Mere Yaar Hai, You Hi Gaate Raho, and Sagar Jaisi Aankhon Wali. Boss, what a song.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, no, good, definitely a nice soundtrack. And I remember
Mhm.
all of these songs. Like I remember the songs
Yeah.
being a big thing. So I was looking into it, and I was quite surprised that the movie was actually a flop. Like it didn't work at the box office. Apparently, that's what Dimple was saying in one of her interviews. That apparently she had banked all of her our hopes on
Mhm.
Sagar, and at the box office it didn't
Mhm.
work. So I don't know. It feels like it has a bigger cultural impact than it actually did for her career wise. um, but Amrita, you were also just talking about Dimple as a performer, right? Like her career as a whole.
Hmm.
I don't like because I remember her. Yeah, I remember the ads. I remember the hair. I don't necessarily remember her in the movies that much. Like even when like
Hmm.
Ram Lakhan being the one that we talked about last. That those are the kind of roles. And then I remember her from like artsy movies like
Yeah.
Yara Seely Seely and like Leke,
Rudali.
that kind of era. Yeah,
Rudali.
which I never watched, but I knew
Mhm.
about them. So yeah, where do you kind of slot in Dimple Kapadia in those era of 80s heroines?
It's interesting because I don't think she was necessarily part of the rat
Mhm.
race.
Yeah.
Um, I think she would have liked to be, but I don't think that's the career that she had. Like for example, in Ram Lakhan, she was like Jackie's girlfriend,
Mm.
and that should have been like on an equal footing with Madhuri, but it really wasn't.
No.
So but then she's also like a senior actress, and she's not somebody that you would just dismiss, and she's not like an extra, and she does
Mm.
command a certain presence on screen. Like, it's kind of, when she comes on screen, it's very that you do like, your eyes do stick to her because she is just so beautiful. But yeah, you're right, like she's not like a regular heroine. I don't think she ever made that jump.
Because I'm just kind of looking through her filmography, right? And
Hmm.
I mean, if Sagar was supposed to be her big comeback, I think it definitely gave her
Yeah.
work, but it never gave her work that
Yeah.
kind of like. And also again, it's somebody, we were talking about this with Anil Kapoor, like why did Anil Kapoor not reach the heights of Amitabh? And same, I'm looking at the filmography of Dimple. Is it because of the performance or the talent, or is it just the kind of movies that
Yeah,
were
it
being
was the
made, you know?
decade of
um,
like, you don't know where this movie is going to land. Is it going to be a critical and commercial success, or is it just going to be a straight to VHS kind of a movie? It was
yeah.
like
Yeah.
the production, it depended on the production and the release and the distribution and or the overall talent that was involved, because a lot of the movies that she was making just almost felt like, oh, this is going the Ramsey way, even, or is it going the artsy way? And there's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Like she did Ram Lakhan with Ghai, but then she also did like Bees Sal Baad, which is like it feels like, a paycheck movie, and all these weird movies that Sunny Deol even did in the 80s and 90s, as you said, uh,
So here are a few that I've got from her IMDb that stood out that I remember. So she was in
Mhm.
Jambaz after this, Allah Rakha, Kash, and then I remember this movie called Zakhmi Aurat, which was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that was like a very horrible kind of like kind of revenge, rape
Yeah.
revenge kind of thing. Akhri Adalat, I remember, and then Ram Lakhan, and then Ram Lakhan put her in this kind of like bhabi kind of older segment, and I don't think she ever really kind of came out of that
Yeah.
until then. Lakin in
Yeah.
1990, which was like 5-6 years later on. And yeah, and then she mixes it up with a little bit of art with commercial. But yeah, it's a very
But
weird career, although
like
she was able to support us.
yeah, it's interesting to see that she consistently was working. She was like every year she was doing like three, four, five movies.
She had
Yeah,
no choice. I think she had
Yeah.
no choice. She was just like a
Because
working mother.
because like Twinkle Khanna and like Twinkle Khanna really, like I haven't really heard Rinky talk about it, but Twinkle Khanna talks about it all the time about like how the only reason like she joined Bollywood, even though she really despised acting, is because she needed to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for like Kajol and her sister as well. Like these were like women whose mothers had to, like Dimple Kapadia and Tanuja had to work because they were just married to deadbeat dads, basically.
Charisma, same
Charisma,
thing. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So that whole like 90s, like Ravina was actually a bit of a differentiator because like she had like a dad who was like married to her mom and was like still in her life. And Ravina like literally plays that up quite a bit. She talks about like, oh, like, I always had like a Mercedes Benz and I used to like love going for long drives. And, like her whole thing is like very different from like how Twinkle and Charisma and, like all of these women, Kajol, talk about their
Hmm.
careers. Um, because they literally had to work because their moms were like working single moms effectively.
Okay, I'm gonna like say something that we complain so much about the influencer
Mhm.
era, right? Like the actors are now doing brand deals and social media and stuff like that. But imagine if Rajesh Khanna, the one of the biggest superstars, when work dried up for him, he couldn't even like take care of his daughters. Like in that, when you think about it, like Rajesh Khanna, like Charisma's dad, all of these people that were established stars, right? When the work dried up in the 80s or the 90s or wherever you want to do, they
Yeah,
just could not
there
sustain
was no other
anything
way.
anymore, right? There is no other way. And at least I understand that now that, people want to have kind of, that even, you can be a judge on a television show and
Yeah.
have a secondary career. And I understand that it's tough out
I
there,
recently
like,
saw Padmini Kolhapuri. She's now in a TV show where she's acting on like a daily series. It's wild to think that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
wow,
Wow.
I didn't know. Hmm.
So like for Rajesh Khanna though, like I feel he was also a consistently working actor like all through the
Mm.
70s and through the 80s. They weren't prestige projects, I wouldn't say. Like, there's stuff like Ram Avatar and, like things like that. He wasn't really working with A-list talent anymore, but he was still working. Um, and he was also having these like really high profile romances, weirdly enough. Like Tina Muneem and he were like a huge deal. And they used to, one of the things that I remember, and these are the weird things that like stay in your brain, but I remember like they were on the cover of like a film fair or something, and they were just like, like I think Tina was the one who was like talking about it, and she was just like, like Rajesh and I are so in love and we are so close, because people were asking her about like living with Rajesh Khanna, which she did. Like she moved into Ashirvad and she was like living with him.
This was after Dimple Kapadia moved out.
This is after Dimple
All
Kapadia
right.
moved out. And so people were just asking her about like, oh, but aren't you like, like he's a married man, like blah blah. And she was just like, well, like we're just so close together. We use the same toothbrush, like that's how close we are. And I just like remember like these other things. And that's basically why like the Ambani, they always talk about how the Ambanis was too conservative to have a Bollywood actress as
Mm.
their daughter-in-law, and that's why they were so disapproving. But no, it is because she was on the cover of magazines talking about her married lover with whom she was sharing toothbrushes. Like, obviously, like it doesn't matter like who you are. You'd just be like, well, that doesn't seem like a person who understands hygiene. Like, maybe we need to think about something. So yeah, like Rajesh Khanna, I don't know how many of these men, whether it's Ranbir, not Ranbir Kapoor, what's his name, Randhir Kapoor,
Randhir.
or Shomu Mukherjee, or Shomu Mukherjee, right, like Kajol's dad,
Hmm.
that's his name, right,
Yeah.
Shomu Mukherjee, yeah. Shomu Mukherjee or Rajesh Khanna, like all these men, like I don't know how much of it is that they didn't have money and how much of it is that they simply weren't motivated enough to give any money to the women once they had moved out of their home. you know
Hmm.
I think it's a very like, well, as long as you're under my roof, I'm responsible for your kharcha pani, but like the moment you leave my roof, I don't see why it's any of my business.
Hmm.
um and I'm just like I see, like I know like Twinkle like really like supported Rajesh Khanna towards the end of his life, and she was like, like Akshay was apparently like giving him money and everything, and I'm sure like Twinkle was the one who was like telling him to do that and everything. And I always think that these women are so nice to their deadbeat dads. It's amazing to me.
Hmm. One more thing that we hadn't noticed: this movie is also written by Javed Akhtar, right?
What?
I thought it was written by Ramesh Sippy. No.
Wait, has I
Yeah, it
am I
is
wrong?
written by
No,
Javed Akhtar.
yeah, yeah, Javed Akhtar. Because this doesn't feel like
Yeah.
a. This it feels like a post breakup kind of Javed Akhtar. Like
मुझे पैसा
like
चाहिए वाला जावेद अख्तर.
yeah, like it doesn't have anything memorable in terms of
Mhm.
dialogues necessarily. Even like the things that we would
Maybe that's
attach.
why like Zoya and Farhan gave Dimple her due after this. Like, my dad gave you Sagar, so we'll give you Dil Chahta Hai and Luck by Chance.
Yeah. So there's this is from IMDb. There was an accusation of Javed Akhtar using an old script he wrote with Salim Khan titled
Mm.
Selab and passing it off as his own. Javed stated Selab was a different script and it was still unused. Another version was Salim Javed had written a film titled Gehra in mid 70s. They spoke to Rajesh Khanna about the film and he agreed. For the second role, Salim and Javed wanted Shatrughan
Mm.
Sinha. Rajesh Khanna refused to work with Shatrughan Sinha for unknown reason. The film ended up being shelved. There was story that Javed recycled the story as Saagar in 1985.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah, it does feel kind of like a weird, like nothing burger. Like it doesn't have any stamp of Javed or Salim or anything like that. Like it doesn't have any of the magic. Like I also feel like the ending of it is very because Kamal Hassan has to die at the
Mhm.
end of this
Yeah.
movie, right? Which thought made me thought of Sangam to a certain
Mhm.
degree, but I felt Sangam had a much better. The female character had much more
Mhm.
agency than
Yeah.
Mona ever does in this movie,
Yeah.
and it's weird that a movie that came out 25, 30 years ago before that was more path breaking than this movie was.
But that is actually a hallmark of of Raj Kapoor's movies.
Hmm.
His women are always way more empowered than like the movies made by most of his competition. And he kept that up consistently right up until the 80s, where the women make the decisions, like, this is what I want out of life, and they don't always lead societally cons- societally conscripted lives, whether it's like, something as far back as Andaz, or like, like all the way through to Hina. It's always like the woman who decides, what she wants to do, and she's willing to take the consequences for it. And I will give Raj Kapoor the due for that, because I criticize him quite a bit, but I have to say, like, that's one thing that I really admire about his movies.
Yeah, I'm also kind of like looking at like I earlier said that I'd read somewhere that it had flopped, but it seems to be I'm getting like both. It was a flop, it was a moderate hit, it was a critical success. So it seems to be unclear
Hmm.
what the.
Whenever I see that in like an 80s and 90s movie, what that tells me is that it actually did make money, but they didn't want to report that to the
Payback.
Yeah.
government and like
Yeah.
pay taxes. So it probably was a hit,
Mhm.
but in the trades, they probably went like, oh no, us have money. No, we're
So this
poor.
is this is the quote that I'd read, which I based this on again from IMDb, which again doesn't mean anything, but it's there. Uh, Dimple stated, "I said I was banking on Sagar, and look what happened. The film flopped. I had to eat my words. Now I never talk about my roles. I let the public decide what is good." Which feels like a very Cineblitz kind of, like that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to be unclear what exactly happened with this movie, but yeah, it didn't. I don't think it revived Dimple Kapadia's career. It gave her work for
Mhm.
sure, but and it did have a cultural impact. I think it was a movie that was known, even if maybe people just didn't go watch it, or that kind of thing. And it was a huge
Yeah.
musical hit.
Yeah.
Um, Sujoy, do you have any other random notes on
Yep.
Saga that you
Why
wanted to
is
kind of
AK
discuss?
Hungle so tanned in this movie? That come out on
यार
a
Oh, why is AK Hungal?
yeah.
कोई तो भेजे एक हंगल को छुट्टियों
Uh,
पे like at least somebody gets
but
him
I'm
like
happy that
out
he's
of the
getting
house.
work.
Yeah.
The seaside, when Rishi Kapoor sees Dimple for the first time, the vines that through which he's hanging are the most plastic leaves I've ever seen ever on cinema. Uh, Lastly, I think this is probably because I've watched White Lotus, the new season, quite recently, is that this movie is really enjoyable in the sense that if you know Kamal Hassan is going to eventually die, then how he dies, because there's so many like foreshadowing that he will give away his life. मैं जान दे दूंगा, मैं मर जाऊंगा, and all that. He keeps on saying that every single time, and so
He
yeah,
manifested his
pretty
own
much.
death.
So it's like a White Lotus season that you know that he's going to die, but how? Is it Shafi Inamdar? Is it Kamla Devi? Is it Dimple? Is it Rishi? Or is it the Sagar? I don't know. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you watch this movie as a White Lotus spin-off season in the 80s production style, then I guess you will find something more interesting.
Oh, there's this whole also fisherman labor union
Yeah,
thing that's
it's
going on with
crazy.
Shafi and Amdar and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of
That's
things going
Sharat
on in this
Saxena
movie.
as well. Somewhere there's mob justice, you know, separating the two. Ki Sai Jafri ko maar diya, then you will not get married, and everybody. Yeah, Gawala mob justice
Yeah,
is
yeah,
a real thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Garga gets involved,
Yeah,
like, no, not Garga. Garga is the
Goga Kapoor.
casino owner. Yeah, yeah, like, no, no, not Goga Kapoor. The guy from Ghulam,
Yeah,
man.
Sharat
Like, oh, I'm
Saxena,
blanking on the. Yeah,
Sarah
yeah. So,
Saxena.
sexy
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
uncle.
Yeah, he gets who looks like Popeye. He's dressed like Popeye
Yeah,
in this movie. I don't know
yeah.
why. Yeah, lots going on.
Um, I have
Mhm.
one more like music trivia. The whole La 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 theme it gets used in another R.D. Burman sort of soundtrack, which eventually made into like a T series soundtrack called Aja Meri Jaan. The song is called Aja Meri Jaan. It's sung by SPB and Anuradha Padwal. It's fabulous. If you want to check out what a tune that was sort of used, but then it gets fully used in a whole song. It's really brilliant.
Nice. Amrita, any final words on Sagar?
You shouldn't watch it. Like, save yourselves. Like,
Why did we watch it?
You should watch it only for Said
like,
Jaffrey.
like there's this moment in like our series when we are just like we have no one to blame for this except
Yeah.
ourselves. That's what this movie is.
Yeah, I just find it an interesting one because it's a movie that was a
Mhm.
big hit, like musically at least. It was part of kind of the culture. It brought Dimple Kapadia back on screen. It was Kamal Hassan's last movie. I do think it looks
Mhm.
amazing, like especially in
Yeah,
the prime print that we're watching. It looks
yeah.
amazing, and for somebody, it's weird. Like for somebody who grew up at the Sagar,
Mhm.
myself, there is something about making a movie at the beach that connects you with that. There's a sensibility at growing up at the beach, like it's, and I do feel that movie captures
Yeah.
it because I could feel like,
You're such a
like
son of a beach.
I am a son of a beach for sure. No, but there's something about the sunsets at the
Mhm.
beach that it connects with you very deeply, because I've spent so
Mhm.
many times, like, the sun's going down, you're there with a bunch of friends and you have like all of stuff going on. And I think that movie captures it. And I think a lot of it is in the
Mhm.
cinematography of it. And I do think they did everything they could to present Dimple
Yeah.
Kapadia very beautifully in this movie, and also just the kind of locale, the beach and stuff like that. I do think it looks
I
great.
do think though, like in Yuhi Gate Raho, it's set in a drunk bar basically, and she dresses up in that flamenco dress. It's like Jumma Jumma basically. She's the only woman.
Yeah.
I felt kind of unsafe for her. Like, yeah,
I thought like it's 80s ka naattu naattu.
yeah,
Like that's what I was thinking.
yeah.
But when one of the dances isn't that good. But yeah. Yeah. So that's it for Sagar. If you love the movie, if you think we're completely wrong, if this had like a huge impact on you, drop us an email at youpodcasting@gmail.com. We'd love to read that email. Maybe we'll do like a listener's email about all of the 80s. I want to do that, like all of the movies
Yeah.
done and like that kind of thing, like to wrap it all up. But I think we have a few more movies to go until we get there. Sujoy, where can people find you
You can
online?
find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at 93K. And you can find Khandan Podcast on all our socials at Khandan Podcast.
Amrita?
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Amrita IQ. And you can also sign up for our Patreon, where I often drop these catch up videos and stuff. And it's also like just a really great place for you to connect with us one on one. And we have a really great community that allows us to experiment and do a whole bunch of things that are coming in the pipeline. You can sign up for as little as $1. And we have an option that we actually came up with specially for our listeners in India who've had issues with payment before, um, where you can actually just pay for the year in advance, and then you get like a significant discount. So it's just a really cool way to show your support and to get a whole bunch of goodies. So check that out.
Support a podcast that Vasan Bala and Gulshan Devaiya comment on Instagram. That's
Yeah.
like we haven't even talked about that at all. But yeah, I think it's really the best way to support us. And I think we also do a lot of free content. I think this month's free content was my video about, I do like a letterbox wrap up video where I talk about all of the movies that I watch that aren't Bollywood necessarily. So I do think people like those, and I think I've left it public. So if you just want to see what the vibe is, come join us on Patreon. We would appreciate it. That's it for this episode. That's it for Sagar. Next one is, I forgot the name, although we're just recording in
Khun
5 minutes.
Bharimang.
Poon Variwak. An audience favorite. So join us there.
Hey, ding, pata, dingity, papa, 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 papa.
Mogembo, Kushua.
Khandan podcast from VIP Glottis. Papa, are you podcasting again?